In this exercise, we're going to practice using the selection tools to modify an existing image. We're going to start with this generic photo of any clothing catalog you've ever come across. And what we're going to do is practice selecting specific areas and altering them in such a way that we end up with an image that looks a bit more punk, something like this. Now again, these aren't extreme changes. It's not the purpose of this exercise. It's to practice your selection tools. And this particular image has several challenges that we're going to see that require you to be a bit more creative with how you select things, and it's probably going to require multiple tools to get the job done relatively well. Now there are some shortcuts that you can try if you want to experiment a little bit, but at the end of the day, it really just boils down to being patient and meticulous, and don't freak out if you miss something, if you go over the line, if you don't select something perfectly. There will be an opportunity for you to fix that after. So focus more on trying to get the basic shape as close as possible as you can using the right tool, and then it becomes a lot easier to just use little touch-ups to fix the areas that are a little weak. So let's go back to our original image. It's shirtproduct1.jpg in your week 2 files. You should see it here in the week 2 images folder. So click to open that, and once it's open, again, make sure your workspace is in a comfortable position. You got your layers. We're going to be using layers for this quite a bit, and we're going to be introduced to masks and how those work. The point of this particular exercise, aside from selections, is to introduce you to non-destructive editing. Now, once we make a selection, what we want to do is create a situation that allows us to go back and change our mind later on. If we alter the physical pixels on the background image, those pixels are changed forever, and it's a real hassle to go back and change them back to what they were. With non-destructive editing, the point is to create masks that keep in memory the selection that you made and only temporarily modify the pixels and allow you to go back and change them whenever you want. So let's start with the easy stuff here. That big red stripe going down the center of the shirt. Now you'll notice I'll zoom in, and I'll be doing that a lot, zooming in, zooming out, because I want to inspect things a bit more closely here, right? So we want to make sure we gather all this red there. You want to evaluate the picture before you start anything and look for the trouble areas. Now I know that over here, look at that nice flat red even color, no brainer. Even with these little shadows over here, I can get away with it. There's nice sharp contrast over here against the flesh tone, against the white. So this area I'm not too worried about in terms of selecting. So we're evaluating now. Where it gets a little tricky is probably somewhere in here, around the collar, and where it gets like thin over here and there's not much pixel stuff to work with. So what I'm doing now is evaluating the different tools I'll be using. So for here, it's fairly straightforward. For that, I can use the magic wand tool, and the magic wand allows us to select large pieces of color that are very similar and contiguous next to each other. So I'm going to go with a 3x3 average pixel, which means that there could be some variations if I go in real close. You see there's some minor variations. It's not pure color that's all identical. So what it'll do is it'll measure a 3 pixel area and average out the red that's being used, so that it'll look for that particular color to match. Now here's the good part, it doesn't have to be perfect right out of the gate. So I'm going to start here where it's nice and even and relatively neutral. So click right there. So 3x3 average tolerance of 32. Make sure anti-aliasing is turned on so you get a nice smooth edge. And as you can see, if I zoom out here, it did a really good job of selecting this nice chunk of red right here in the middle. Here it hit some issues because the variation in red is probably too large to fit within the initial selection. However, the beauty is that you can click on this icon to add to the selection, or you can hold down the shift key and you'll notice there's a little plus that appears next to my icon when I hold down shift. When I let go, it disappears. Now when I click and hold down the shift key and click again in an area that's not selected, it includes it into the existing selection. So you can keep adding to your selection this way. And let's say here would be another good spot to click. So it caught this whole area. And if you see little areas like this in the middle that didn't get selected, you just click on them again and it'll add it to the existing selection. And again, the difference between this red and here is too large, so it didn't automatically choose it. Click there, and there it is. Now you'll notice, near the edge, sometimes these don't get selected. Pick and choose your battles. You can just click the edge there and extend it a little bit. But don't try to select these little faint red overflow outside the marquee. That's the anti-aliasing feature, which will smooth out the selection. So don't worry about those. So let's look what else. Oh, there's a little red down here. Hold down shift again and click, and there you go, selected. You want to get really technical, you get that little spot too. Keep an eye out for details. And now we're dealing with the more tricky neck area here. Now you have a couple of options. You can switch tools at this point. You can maybe switch to the lasso tool, or maybe even the magnetic lasso tool. Magnetic lasso will automatically detect the edges here. So again, holding down shift, because we want to add to our existing selection, what we want to do is select that area right in there, right? So I'm going to click and drag, and when I feel okay, I can click again to just set a point there. All right. Now you can overlap because that's going to be selected. And there. When you start seeing things going a little wonky here, you can pull it back a bit and just maybe click to set a point of origin. And now you want to close the circle here. When you see the little circle on the magnet icon, it means it's ready to close. So if you click again, it'll finish that selection and it'll add it to the existing one. You can do the same thing here, but for this I might want to use the polygonal lasso tool because it's fairly tricky to get it magnetic because there's not enough contrast in here, and freehand it'll just be a sloppy mess. So with the polygon lasso tool, hold down shift key because we want to keep adding. Start like at this edge over here, and now just follow the contour of the red outline. And as you get to the closer areas, you can click and add more points. Every time you move, click, you lay down the line. Sometimes it's longer lines, sometimes you got to slow it down. And there. So I got that little piece of red over here. And I could do the same thing with the collar over here. So I can hold down shift, click, click, click along the edge of this shape. There. It doesn't matter, you can overlap now and come back. Now this just builds straight lines, but because we're going and we're adding a lot of increments, we can give the illusion of curves because we're seeing it from a distance anyway. That little guy over here we can also add that in there. So now if we zoom out, we should see a nice selection of all the red. Now here's where normally we could go here and go adjust the hue and saturation and change the color. Look at that. However, if we do that, we commit to it and we change the background permanently. So I'm going to cancel that. We don't want that. What we want to do is create a mask. So this selection of ours now becomes its own little independent shape that protects this area. And to do that, with this area selected, you can click on the Add Mask tool. Oops, that's not what we wanted. Undo, Control Z. What we want to do is add an adjustment layer. Okay, now because we have this selected, we can add an adjustment layer, which is non-destructive hue saturation. And what it will do is create a new layer for hue saturation. But you see over here, this is the mask for it. So it took our selection and created a masked area. So now if we change the hue saturation, it only affects our selected area. You could change this, you could change that. So I don't recall what color we used on the other one. Purplish. Okay, close enough. So that's part one. Now what's cool about this is you can disable it and enable it, go back to the original color. Or if you find that there are some areas that we missed, for example, that little splotch in the middle of the button, maybe it's red thread, but maybe we want purple thread. What you could do is with the mask selected, you can use the brush tool, change the size so that it fits right over there, and when you paint, it includes the hue saturation area. So now you get purple. Don't worry about this part. We'll go a lot more in depth when we talk about masks in more detail. But you can see also here where there's a bit of red showing through, you can now paint. And what you're physically doing is painting the mask over here. That allows the pixels to show through. So I'm not going to get too far into that part because I'll have a separate exercise just for masking. But you can use it for touch-ups like this. And here's something else that's cool. If ever you want to bring back that selection, you can hold down the control key on the mask and you get that little square. And when you click it, it automatically reloads your selection. So it's a great way of saving selections just in case. Great. So now let's work on the rest of the shirt. Same technique. We're going to start with the magic wand. Select the purple area here. Again, if there are areas that aren't selected, just hold down Shift and click them there and there. That area looking good. Don't worry if it's not perfect. We're going to come back here and tighten things up a little bit to make sure the button isn't affected. So we got that part. Now let's get this one. Shift. There you go. We got a little bit of edge here we need to add. Just click again. And feel free to zoom in to see exactly what's going on. That's where you see all the details and what's like over here. We're going to have to touch that up a little bit. But for now, let's add this part into the selection. See, there it is. Some more details in here you want to capture. Shift, click. There we go. We got those. So make sure you're looking at all the details. Hold down the space bar to move through your document and check out all the see, there's some more here that we want to tackle. And this we're going to have to edit. So now we have most of it selected there, but there are areas that we don't want selected. For example, here, this white, we don't want to change color here. So now I want to subtract, and again, evaluate what kind of tool you want to use. You can try again with the magic wand tool and hold minus. Ooh, not perfect, so undo. For this, I'm going to choose the polygon lasso tool again because of these straight lines over here. So I'm going to hold down Alt now. So instead of plus, I see a minus, and I'll click here, there, click again, and this doesn't matter. So I close that selection, and boom, it erases, it cuts out that part. And if I recall, there was another piece down here that was also giving us some trouble. Where'd it go? It was near the sleeve, right? Ah, there. So don't be afraid to get in real close with your zoom tool, Control plus and Control minus to zoom out. And with the polygon lasso, or even, we could use a freehand lasso tool here. We're going to hold down the Alt for the minus, and I'm just going to come in and just roughly erase everything in there. A little check C here, maybe add a few more pixels. And again, don't worry about these pixels that are outside the margin area. That's going to be what's called your anti-aliasing. You need some of that to smooth out the edges. And it looks pretty good. So now we're going to repeat the process with the selection. We're going to create a new adjustment layer from the layers panel, a hue saturation, and now you can see in here the white is our selection, the black is masked off so it doesn't get affected, and make sure you have the actual color selected. Here in the properties panel now you can change the color of the shirt. So I think we change it to a nice green here. There you go. But feel free to change it to a color that you like a bit more if you prefer that. But try to get it to match the sample. There you go. And again, if ever you want to revert back to normal, you could just click here. Now if you go look at the example image again, there's two more things left on this image to do. One involves the eyes. We want to match the eyes to the purple on the shirt, and we want to stylize the hair a little bit, make it a bit more punk, and let's see what happens there. That part I'll leave up to you as part of your challenge.